On a freezing December afternoon in the middle of the Atlantic, Captain David Morehouse looked through his spyglass and realized he was looking at a ghost. The vessel drifting aimlessly before him was the Mary Celeste, a ship he knew well, but she was yawing wildly under short sail with absolutely no one at the helm. So Captain David Morehouse ordered his first mate, Oliver DeVoe, to take a small boarding party across the choppy waters and investigate the silent, creeping vessel. What Oliver DeVoe found when he climbed aboard made no sense at all. And the deeper he went, the less sense it made. The ship was completely seaworthy, and though there was some water in the hold, she was nowhere near sinking. Stranger still, the crew's personal items, including the captain's wife's sewing machine and the crew's half-smoked pipes, were left exactly where they lay. It looked less like a tragic shipwreck and more like a grand magic trick where 10 people had simply vanished into thin air. Why would an experienced captain order his family and crew into a tiny lifeboat in the middle of the ocean when their giant wooden ship was completely safe? To explain this terrifying impossibility, the public quickly did what they always do when faced with a vacuum of facts. They started making things up. A young struggling writer named Arthur Conan Doyle published a sensationalized story that changed the ship's name to the Marie Celeste and added highly dramatic, entirely fictional details. He invented warm cups of tea sitting on the table and half-eaten breakfasts, which the public and subsequent newspapers eagerly swallowed as absolute truth. This sparked wild theories of giant squids, phantom pirate attacks, and sudden violent madness that forced everyone to jump overboard. But if we strip away Conan Doyle's fictional breakfast, the real, documented physical evidence still leaves us with a deeply unsettling mystery. Captain Benjamin Briggs left behind his boots, his money, his navigation tools, and his family's highly personal diaries, things you simply do not abandon willingly. Leaving your wealth, your boots, and your navigation tools behind in the 19th century was the maritime equivalent of running out of your house with no pants and no phone. But the true horror of the ship didn't start in the middle of the Atlantic in 1872. It started 11 years earlier in a shipyard in Nova Scotia under a different name. Long before she was the Mary Celeste, she was registered as the Amazon, and she was a cursed vessel from the very moment she touched the water. Within a mere 48 hours of taking command for her maiden voyage, her first captain, Robert McClellan, fell mysteriously ill and suddenly died. So she got a new commander, but on her very first crossing of the Atlantic, she promptly collided with another ship in the English Channel. After being repaired, she ran aground in Nova Scotia, suffered severe structural damage, and bankrupted 3 successive owners who tried to salvage her. Sailors are a famously superstitious bunch, so renaming her Mary Celeste was a desperate corporate attempt to wash the bad luck off her reputation. But the crew who boarded her in 1872 knew her dark history. They knew they weren't just sailing a ship, they were living inside a floating cemetery. When you believe your vessel is actively trying to kill you, every unfamiliar groan of the timber sounds like an omen of doom. Did this suffocating psychological dread turn a minor, easily manageable shipboard mishap into an absolute frantic race for survival? To understand how a minor issue became a fatal panic, we have to look at what the ship was carrying: 1,701 barrels of industrial alcohol. During the voyage, some of these barrels leaked, filling the hold with highly volatile, invisible chemical fumes that began to hiss under the decks. Because the ship had been heavily rebuilt, she creaked and groaned in ways that would terrify a crew already waiting for the curse to strike. Therefore, when Captain Benjamin Briggs ordered a crewman to check the water levels, the combination of bad data and psychological dread created a disaster. The rescuers found the ship's bilge pump completely disassembled on the deck, suggesting they were frantically trying to fix a perceived leak. If Captain Benjamin Briggs took a faulty reading with a sounding rod, he would have mistakenly believed the ship was rapidly filling with water and about to founder. Driven by the fear of the ship's reputation, they made the hasty decision to tie a tow line to the lifeboat and wait it out behind the ship. But if they were safely trailing behind the ship on a strong rope, what terrifying event severed their only link to survival? This brings us to the chilling physical evidence that the rational theory fails to explain: the deep, deliberate axe gashes chopped into the ship's wooden rail. And then there was the main peak halyard, the rope used as a tow line, which was found cleanly cut and frayed at the end. Did a sudden squall snap the rope, leaving 10 people to watch their cursed ship sail away from them into the fog? Or did something far more desperate, perhaps a sudden flare of panic, happen on deck before they went over the side? If the fumes threatened to explode, the crew may have cut themselves loose in a moment of pure, unadulterated terror. In the end, the sea swallowed their small lifeboat, leaving no survivors to tell us what truly happened in those final seconds. They weren't killed by ghosts. They were killed by their own panic, fleeing a perfectly safe ship because they believed its cursed past had finally caught up with them. But the panic theory has never explained the axe gashes chopped into that rail. sailors abandoning ship in terror don't stop to hack at their own hull. Somebody in those last minutes was swinging an axe, and no theory we have can tell you at what. And this is just one story among countless mysteries history left behind. Subscribe, and let's keep uncovering them together. And if this one got you thinking, a like or a share helps more curious minds find it.